Thank you. Well, thanks for the invitation. I'm honored to be here. Thanks to JT and Shu of putting together this event. I think it's great. Can you hear me well? Yeah, perfect. So I'm going to present a project which I think it's a good example of the main concepts of our design and our design process as well. It's a project in Boston, in Mission Hill. It was an RFP, as Tim said, and we were the designated developer. So before we start designing, we set a big challenge to ourselves. We said, what if instead of designing a building, we design a series of public spaces, which it was a little bit to start in a reverse way. We always think as the projects as the mass, as a building, as an object, and we wanted to kind of turn that around. So with this intention, we wanted to define the public space as the public space in between, but also within. And I'm going to be more focused on that part of the public space, as the public space that is within. So this scheme explains a little bit the approach of making a building that it's a barrier it's a barrier between the public and the private, and sometimes the space between these two buildings, that space in between, which is here the big question, what's going to happen with that space? Sometimes it's just a leftover space, and sometimes that space is not shaped or crafted for human activities. So the approach that we had is kind of the reverse approach of having the building going to the property lines, and then creating a porous building where there is a cluster of a series of public spaces where really blurs the public and the private. You know, so you can walk through the building and have different experiences, etc. So I'm going to give you just some basic information. The property is about 58,000 square feet. It has 44 units. We have 10 affordable units, which is like 23%. By law, you need to provide 15%. And then the project is part of the E+ program, which we're in collaboration with the BRA and the DND. And that was one of the main goals of the RFP. So that was another challenge, but we saw it as a big opportunity to bring sustainability not only as a response to the green technology, but also on how we should live in a more green project. So we have a net energy surplus of 21%. We have one of the main features of the project is the open green space. So the site, it's about 58,000 square feet. We have more than 50,000 square feet of open green space between the public space and the private gardens for the units. We also have 82 bike parking spaces, and the goal is that we discourage the use of cars. The project is 1,000 feet from Roxbury Crossing T station. So we're providing the bike parking, and also we're going to have a car sharing system and an electric car station. So trying to explain you the building, I have these two images. This is the profile of the project, the outer line of the project. And then in this one, what we did is we raised the building. We raised the interior habitable space. And the only thing that you see is open green space. Again, the combination of public spaces and private gardens. So the site is it's a very challenging site. It's between two streets, Terrace Street and Parker Street, and there is a difference of 35 feet, which is about 3 stories. So I'm going to explain you with this diagram just in a very simple way on how was our design process. So the first thing, well, we went to see the site, while we were driving through the street, through the buildings, it's a very narrow street, Parker Street. And when we arrived to the site, we felt a relief of this open space, you know. So we were attracted to that. Also, there was a community garden and an art park. So those were kind of like the first influences. Then we made a deep research of what was the input of the community. The city did a lot of community meetings prior to putting the RFP, so there was a lot of information. And the community was very attracted also about this open space. And then also they were very concerned about massing, having big buildings on Parker and creating shading to the community gardens. So that's when we set the second challenge. We said, what if instead of having a building on Parker, we have a park? So, and that's where we start our process of design. So on Parker, we want to experience a landscape. And from terrace, we want to experience a building. So the first thing we did is we create terraces through the site. We built up, which you can see on terrace, 3 stories, then 2 stories, then 1 story. And that way we achieve a continuous roof at the level of Parker. And then we put green roofs. So then we have a full park at the level of Parker. Then we erode this building, and we create these public plazas, public courtyards. Then we eroded even more, and we created 50 private gardens, which are about 12 feet by 12 feet. So more than 1 garden per unit. And then with that, we created a fascinating path of travel from Parker to terrace, but also for the tenants to get into their units. So here you can see in this render the building from terrace, which with the different private gardens, it breaks the massing. So instead of feeling a one massive building, you feel it like it's a series of buildings. And again, it's green everywhere, you know. So we wanted to have no disconnect between what is landscape and what is architecture, and also, as I'm gonna explain, also art, you know. So we want all 3 to come together. And then this is Parker. So this is where you don't experience a building, you just experience a park with continuous views. The half front part, it's a community, and the half back part, it's a solar farm on top of green. So as you go down and you start walking through the project, you just continually find a new plaza, you know. And I mean, there is architecture, development, construction. It's a complex process, and there is different attractions. So you can be very focused on different things, you know. But the one that I'm very attracted to is the human experience in architecture. I think the technical part is part of a process of hard work on how to resolve them. But what is essential for our projects is that human experience and creating these spaces that are made, whoops. Oh, that was a beep. That's it? Yes. So here? Is it this one? So I'll keep going. So so basically that plaza is just an example of several plazas. So from there, what we did is we did like a few standard pieces. We have 1 kitchen for all 44 units. We have 5 windows for all 44 units. We have 3 closets. And we created this standardization to create efficiencies. And then we play with these standard elements, and we create 12 units. Okay, so And then with these 12 units, then we start putting them together to create these clusters of plazas. So you will see the site plan, it looks very complex on how everything is together because it's not a building consents in one volume, but it's spread out. But we have a module. Most of our units are 12 feet, so the structure is very efficient, etc. So then the other thing that we wanted to create is activate these spaces. So we had very interesting meetings with all the community, but also with the artists of Mission Hill. And the artist collective, Mission Hill's artist collective, came up with the idea of what if you put an art center? And we found that it was a great idea, that it can be kind of a hub of activating these open public spaces. So, thank you. So this is the elements that create the units. You can see in green all the private gardens. This is one example of one of the units. This is the ground level. So on the ground level, we have the retail, the parking, 3 accessible units, and everything lives into a courtyard. And then we start populating the site, and it's creating all the different plazas. So the void areas are all the different plazas that the units live in. And then this is the roof. So this roof, all this green, it's at the level of Parker. On the top area, you can see the community gardens, and in the bottom area, the solar farm. So art and community space, it was not enough just to create these spaces, but also to activate them. We have this public plaza on Parker, and then from there we have 5 public spaces and an art center. So the art center, the idea is that help us to activate this public space. Thank you very much.